Zara stood at the window, staring out at the endless stretch of stars. The view from the high-rise chamber of the alien peace station was beautiful, but it did little to ease her nerves. Her mind was heavy with the weight of what was about to happen. In just a few hours, she would meet the human diplomat who had been chosen to represent Earth in the peace talks between her species and the humans. Zara had heard stories about these humans, but she was never prepared to meet one, especially not up close. She was an alien, strong, intelligent, and respected in her community. Zara was one of the most skilled warriors in her species, known for her calm in the face of danger and her ability to negotiate without showing emotion. But none of that mattered now. The thought of having to interact with a human partner filled her with dread. Her people had lived in isolation for centuries, never truly mingling with the humans. Humans were seen as weak, emotional, and unpredictable. In Zara's society, emotions were a sign of weakness, something to be controlled and hidden at all costs. But humans were different. They wore their emotions on their sleeves, expressing joy, sadness, and even anger without fear. It confused Zara, and the thought of dealing with such vulnerability in a partner terrified her. She had been assigned to these peace talks because of her experience and influence, but Zara had never wanted to engage with the humans. It wasn't that she hated them. It was just that she feared what they represented, something that could not be controlled or understood. A human partner would bring nothing but chaos into her well-ordered life. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps behind her. Zara turned around quickly, her sharp eyes scanning the room. A fellow officer entered the chamber, a young alien named Nara. She smiled at Zara, sensing her unease. "Zara, are you ready?" Nara asked gently, her voice calm. Zara hesitated before responding. "Ready? I don't know. I've always known my place in this world, Nara, but now I'm expected to work with a human. I don't understand why they would choose me for this task." Nara placed a reassuring hand on Zara's shoulder. "You are the best among us, Zara. The peace talks need someone with your strength and wisdom. Don't let your fear control you. Humans are strange, yes, but they can also be strong in their own way. I think you'll be surprised." Zara didn't respond. She wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Everything she had been taught told her that humans were nothing but trouble, but Nara's words lingered in her mind. Could humans really be that different? Was there more to them than she had been led to believe? The door to the chamber opened, and Zara turned to face the visitor. Her heart skipped a beat. A human man stood in the doorway looking slightly out of place in the grand alien surroundings. His appearance wasn't anything like she had expected. He wasn't overly muscular or tall, but there was something about his posture that radiated quiet strength. He was dressed in the formal attire of a diplomat, his expression calm but intense, like someone who had seen both peace and war. Zara couldn't help but notice how confident he seemed, standing there alone in a room full of strangers. It made her uneasy. The human man extended a hand toward Zara. "Hello," he said with a warm smile. "I'm Marcus. It's a pleasure to meet you." Zara stared at his hand for a moment, her mind racing. She had never met a human before, and now one was standing in front of her, expecting her to trust him. Her instincts told her to be cautious, to pull away, but she forced herself to step forward and shake his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive, and there was a strange calm in his eyes. "I am Zara," she replied, her voice steady despite the unease she felt. "I've heard a lot about humans." Marcus chuckled softly. "I can imagine. Most of what you've heard is probably true. We are unpredictable, to say the least." He paused, looking at Zara with an expression that seemed both amused and understanding. "But I promise you, Zara, I'm here to help. We're all in this together, and if we want peace, we need to work as partners. Zara felt a strange flutter in her chest at his words, but she quickly pushed it away. She had to stay focused. This was business, not personal. The last thing she needed was to let her emotions get in the way of the mission. "I'm not here for peace because I want to be your partner," Zara said, her voice colder than she intended. "I'm here because it's necessary, and I will do my job, but I don't need distractions." Marcus didn't seem offended by her harsh words. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if he understood exactly what she meant. "Fair enough. But maybe over time, we'll find that being partners doesn't have to be a distraction. Maybe we'll learn from each other." Zara didn't know how to respond to that. The idea of learning from a human was absurd. What could she possibly learn from someone like him? But there was something in his eyes, something that suggested he wasn't like other humans. Perhaps he wasn't like the stories she had heard. Her thoughts were interrupted as Nara gave her a gentle nudge. "Zara, maybe it's time to begin the discussions. There's no reason to waste any more time." Zara nodded, still uncertain about what lay ahead. She turned back to Marcus and gestured for him to follow her. As they walked toward the meeting room, Zara tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in her chest. She had never been afraid of anything before, until now. And as they entered the room, she couldn't help but wonder if the human she was about to partner with would change everything she thought she knew about herself. The next day, Zara found herself in the grand hall of the peace station, preparing for the first real meeting with Marcus. The space was quiet and calm, the high walls lined with alien technology and advanced communication systems. But none of it mattered to Zara. Her mind was still racing, still uncertain about what she was about to face. The humans were known to be unpredictable, and Marcus, this human diplomat, was no exception. She had seen him the day before, but only for a brief moment. Now she would have to work alongside him. She wasn't sure what to expect, but her instincts told her it would be nothing like she had planned. Zara's thoughts were interrupted. When the door to the hall opened, Marcus walked in, his expression calm but determined. He wasn't wearing the usual uniform that Zara was accustomed to seeing on human diplomats. Instead, he wore a simple, dark suit that was far more casual than she expected. It made him seem more human somehow. His eyes met hers, and he gave her a friendly smile. It wasn't forced, but it was genuine. "Good morning, Zara," he said, his voice warm. "I hope you had a restful night." Zara barely nodded. She was still unsure about him, but she knew that she had to be polite. After all, this was her duty. "Good morning, Marcus," she replied, her voice steady but distant. "I'm ready to begin the discussions." Marcus seemed unfazed by her coldness. "Of course. I've read through the documents you provided, and I think we're ready to start. But first, I thought it might help if we got to know each other a bit more. I mean, if we're going to work together, it makes sense, right?" Zara couldn't hide the surprise on her face. She wasn't sure what he meant by that. "Get to know each other?" she repeated, her voice almost incredulous. She had assumed their partnership would be strictly professional. No unnecessary conversations, no personal connections. But Marcus was already turning that idea upside down. "Yes," Marcus said with a smile. "I understand your species isn't used to emotions, but I believe understanding each other as individuals can help us work together more effectively." Zara could feel the tension in her shoulders as she clenched her fists. She was not used to opening up to anyone, let alone a human. Emotions, to her, were a weakness. They clouded judgment and got in the way of clear thinking. But Marcus seemed so sincere, so disarmingly honest, that for a moment Zara almost felt unsure. "I don't have time for personal conversations," Zara said, forcing the words out of her mouth. "We are here to discuss peace between our species, that's all." Marcus didn't push. He simply nodded, his smile never fading. I understand. But sometimes, Zara, a little bit of understanding goes a long way. Zara looked away, focusing on the data pads laid out before her. She didn't want to engage in anything beyond the official matters. She had a job to do, and that was all that mattered. There was no room for distractions, especially not from a human. They sat down at the large table in the center of the room, where the peace talks would begin. Zara watched as Marcus began to lay out his own set of data pads, preparing for the discussions ahead. He didn't seem rushed or stressed, like most of the diplomats she had worked with. Instead, he moved with an ease that only made her feel more tense. She couldn't understand it. How could he remain so calm when he was so out of place? His kind had no understanding of her people's ways, yet he was acting as if this was just another day. Marcus glanced over at her, sensing her discomfort. You don't have to worry, Zara. We'll make this work. I know it's not easy, but I believe we can find a way to bring peace together. Zara's heart skipped a beat. The words were so simple, yet so sincere. She had heard humans talk like this before, but it had never felt real. They were always trying to convince others, with empty words. But Marcus didn't seem to be doing that. His sincerity was different. She could feel it even if she didn't want to. I didn't come here to make friends, Marcus, she said, her tone sharper than she intended. I came here to do what's best for my people. Marcus didn't flinch. And I came here to do the same for mine. But sometimes doing what's best for your people means finding common ground with others. Zara glared at him, frustration bubbling up inside her. She didn't want to agree with him, but part of her knew he was right. The peace talks couldn't be just about her people. They needed to consider both sides. But the idea of cooperating with someone she still considered to be an enemy, it was more difficult than she had imagined. The room fell silent for a moment as they both looked over their data pads. Zara found herself glancing at Marcus more than once, noticing the small details she hadn't seen before. His eyes were focused, yet kind. His posture remained relaxed, but there was a sense of purpose in his every movement. It made her wonder, what kind of person was he really? Was he truly as different from her people as she had always believed? Zara, Marcus said after a long pause, I know you've probably heard a lot of things about humans, but not everything you've been told is true. I don't want to force anything on you, but if you ever want to talk about things other than peace talks, about life, about what we both want, then I'm here. No pressure, just a conversation. Zara opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She wanted to say something sharp, something that would push him away, but for some reason, she couldn't. Instead, she looked down at her datapad and started scrolling through the documents, hoping it would be enough to focus her mind. But the truth was, it wasn't. The days that followed the first official meeting were filled with discussions, negotiations, and a slow but steady change in Zara's mindset. She still found it hard to completely accept Marcus's friendly attitude, but each time they spoke, she found herself softening just a little despite her best efforts to remain distant. The truth was, Zara had never met anyone quite like him. At first, the peace talks seemed like a predictable, even dull, process. The room was filled with formalities and endless details about trade routes, territory exchanges, and military alliances. Zara kept her attention on the facts, sticking to what she knew. She would engage when necessary, but her mind always drifted, back to the looming feeling of fear that humans evoked in her. Marcus, on the other hand, had a way of making the discussions feel personal. It wasn't the usual approach she had expected from someone representing another species. He seemed to listen, not just to her words, but to the underlying meanings, to the worries she didn't even realize she had. He asked questions that made her think differently about her people's long-held beliefs. He wasn't trying to push an agenda. He was genuinely interested in what she had to say. One afternoon, after a particularly long session, Marcus invited her to join him for a walk. outside. They were both weary, but the invitation seemed sincere. Zara hesitated for a moment, unsure about stepping out of the comfort of the station and into the unknown. But there was something about the way Marcus looked at her, his eyes steady, yet welcoming, that made her curiosity win over her hesitation. "I promise it's just a walk," Marcus said with a smile, sensing her doubts. "We could both use a break. And I think you'll find the view is worth it." Zara agreed, though reluctantly. They made their way through the corridors of the station, stepping out into the cool air of the planet's surface. The peaceful scenery stretched out before them, with rolling hills and vast lakes reflecting the soft glow of a distant sun. Zara had to admit, it was beautiful. As they walked in silence, Zara found herself stealing glances at Marcus. His calmness in the midst of everything they had faced, his willingness to step outside of the formalities, made her wonder if he truly believed that peace could come from working together. Or was he simply trying to win her trust? After several minutes, Marcus broke the silence, speaking in a quiet voice that seemed to match the peaceful atmosphere around them. "You know, Zara, I've been thinking about something." Zara turned her head to meet his eyes. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about how strange it is to be part of something so important, something that will affect the future of both our species. And yet, here we are, two individuals, walking on a strange planet, trying to make sense of it all." His gaze was distant, almost thoughtful. "But I believe we can do it. We can find a way to bridge the gap between our worlds." Zara felt a sudden pang in her chest, the same feeling she had experienced before when Marcus's sincerity started to stir something in her. His words didn't sound like empty promises, they sounded like hope. "You believe in it that much?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded slowly. "I do. I believe in it because I believe in people. Even if we're different, even if we have different histories and different ways of living, we're all just trying to find our place in the universe. If we can learn to understand each other, really understand, then we can make a difference." Zara was silent for a long time as they continued walking. She had always been taught that humans were unpredictable, chaotic, and ultimately weak. And yet, here was Marcus, steady, calm, and more certain of the future than anyone she had ever met. For the first time, Zara found herself questioning everything she had been taught. Was it possible that Marcus was right? Could there truly be peace between her people and humans? Could there be a partnership, not based on duty, but on something more? The thought made her uneasy. It was easier to stay focused on the goal of peace without considering the personal implications. But now, as they walked in silence beneath the endless sky, she couldn't help but wonder if this was all leading to something bigger than just an agreement between two species. They reached a small clearing where the view of the planet's horizon stretched out before them. The sun, though distant, cast a soft golden light over the landscape, giving the whole scene a peaceful glow. Marcus stopped and turned to face her. "I didn't bring you out here to talk about the peace talks, Zara," he said quietly. "I wanted you to see this, to take a moment and just breathe." Zara didn't know how to respond. She had never allowed herself to simply breathe before. Everything she did was calculated, controlled. But Marcus seemed to find peace in the simplest things. It made her wonder how much she had missed by focusing so much on the future. For the first time in their interactions, Zara allowed herself to let go, just for a moment. She inhaled deeply, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, and looked out at the horizon. The peacefulness of the scene surrounded her, and for the first time, she felt a small crack in the walls she had built around herself. Marcus was watching her, waiting. When she met his gaze, she could see something in his eyes, an understanding, a recognition that maybe, just maybe, they were both seeing the world a little differently now. "I know this is hard for you, Zara," Marcus said softly, "and I don't want to push you. But I hope you know that I'm not just here to negotiate peace. I'm here because I believe in the possibility of something more. We don't have to be afraid of each other." Zara felt a tightness in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. She had spent so long building up walls against the unknown, against the fear that came with trusting someone from another species. But in this moment, standing next to Marcus, she realized that maybe fear wasn't the right thing to hold on to anymore. "Maybe," Zara said quietly, her voice barely audible over the soft wind. "Maybe I don't have to be afraid." Marcus smiled gently, his eyes filled with something Zara couldn't quite place. It wasn't arrogance or pride. It was something deeper, something that made her feel like just maybe there was hope for both their people. They stood there for a few moments longer, side by side, gazing out at the vast, unknown world ahead. For the first time, Zara wasn't afraid. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew that whatever it was, she wasn't alone. The days that followed the quiet walk had been different. Zara could feel the change, even if she tried to ignore it. It wasn't just the peace talks that were shifting. It was something deeper, something she had never expected. It was the way Marcus had looked at her, not with the cold distance she had expected from a human, but with warmth. It was in the way he spoke to her, not as a superior or a colleague, but as an equal. Zara had always prided herself on being in control. She was strong. She was disciplined. She had spent years training both physically and mentally to be the best. Nothing, no one, could make her feel vulnerable. Until now. Her thoughts often drifted to the words Marcus had said to her on that walk. "I'm here because I believe in the possibility of something more. We don't have to be afraid of each other." The words echoed in her mind, making her question everything she had believed in. Zara stood in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The planet below glowed softly, and for the first time, she didn't feel the usual weight of fear that had always clung to her whenever she was in the presence of a human. The door behind her opened, and she turned to find Marcus walking toward her. His face was as calm as ever, but there was something different in his eyes today. Something more open, more vulnerable. It made Zara's heart beat a little faster, and she immediately pushed the feeling aside. "I thought I might find you here," Marcus said, his voice soft and steady. "I wanted to talk, if that's okay." Zara hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to seem too eager, but there was something about him that drew her in. She nodded. "What is it, Marcus?" "I know the peace talks are important, but I've been thinking a lot about us," he said, his gaze meeting hers. "I know it's not easy. For you, for me, but I think we're both learning something here, about each other, about ourselves." Zara frowned slightly, unsure where this conversation was headed. She hadn't expected Marcus to bring up their connection, not after the careful distance she had maintained. "I don't see what there is to learn. We have a job to do, Marcus. Peace between our species. That's the only thing that matters." Marcus smiled softly, a look of understanding in his eyes. "I get that. I do. But maybe, just maybe there's more to it than just duty. Maybe we're not just here for peace talks. Maybe we're here because something else is waiting for us. Something we didn't expect." Zara took a step back, her mind racing. She had never thought of it that way. She had always believed that peace could only be achieved through logic and reason, through strategy and negotiation. But now Marcus was suggesting something different, something deeper, more personal. She wasn't sure how to respond. She had spent so much time keeping herself apart, building walls around her heart, and now Marcus was asking her to consider something more. To consider connection. "I don't understand what you're saying," Zara said, her voice cold again. This is about diplomacy, Marcus, nothing more. Marcus didn't look discouraged. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I know. But diplomacy doesn't have to be just about politics. It's about people. And you and I, we're people, Zara. We're not just representatives of our species. We're individuals. And I think in some way, we're learning to trust each other. Zara felt a wave of confusion wash over her. Trust? She had never been good at trusting others. Not after all the years of training, of learning that emotions and connections could lead to weakness. But now, as she looked into Marcus's eyes, she felt something inside her stir. A small spark of hope, perhaps. I've spent my whole life keeping my distance from others, Zara admitted, her voice quieter than she intended. It's easier that way. I can focus on my mission, on the goal. I don't have time for distractions. Marcus nodded, understanding. I get it. I really do. But sometimes, Zara, the best things in life come when we least expect them. Maybe this partnership between us, maybe it's not just about the peace talks, maybe it's about something more. Zara felt a pang of something, fear, longing. She wasn't sure. She wanted to push him away, to remind him that this was nothing more than a diplomatic assignment. But at the same time, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. The connection between them, though still uncertain, was undeniable. I don't know what you want from me, Marcus, Zara said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. I don't know how to be more than what I've always been. I don't know how to be vulnerable. Marcus stepped closer, his gaze softening. You don't have to be anything other than yourself, Zara. You don't have to change. For me, or for anyone. But if we're going to work together, if we're going to make this peace real, we have to trust each other. We have to open up. Just a little. Zara took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. This wasn't supposed to be happening. She wasn't supposed to be feeling this way, but despite herself, she found herself drawn to him. There was something in the way he looked at her, something in the way he spoke, that made her want to believe him. You're asking me to trust you, Zara said, her voice quiet and hesitant. And I don't know if I can. I've never trusted anyone like that before. Marcus smiled, a small, understanding smile. I know, and I'm not asking for all your trust at once. But maybe, just maybe, we can start with a little. Zara didn't know how to respond to that. She had spent so long hiding behind walls of fear, avoiding connections, and now, here was Marcus, asking her to let go, to trust, to take a step forward into the unknown. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, in the quiet of the observation deck, looking out at the stars. It felt like the entire universe was waiting, holding its breath. And then, slowly, almost without thinking, Zara took a step toward Marcus. It was a small movement, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. She was willing to take that first step. Okay, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Okay, I'll try. Marcus's smile grew wider, and for the first time since they had met, Zara felt a small sense of peace. She didn't know what the future held, or what this connection between them would lead to, but she knew one thing. She wasn't afraid anymore. The peace talks had reached a critical point. The tension between the two species was palpable, and every word, every gesture carried immense weight. Zara had thought that her main job was to keep the discussions focused on the issues that mattered, the future of their worlds, the resources, the territory. But now, more than ever, it felt like the emotional stakes were just as high. She couldn't deny it any longer. The connection between her and Marcus had grown, and it was no longer just about the peace talks. It was about them, about something neither of them had expected. But that made things more complicated, not easier. Zara was standing at the large table, going over the final details of the peace agreement. Her mind kept drifting back to the way Marcus had spoken to her earlier that day, how he had shared his own doubts about the peace process, his own fears for the future. He had opened up to her in a way that made her heart ache with uncertainty. But in his eyes she saw something that she couldn't deny: hope. Hope for a future where both species could work together. Hope for a future where they didn't have to be enemies anymore. The thought of a human, of Marcus, believing in something as fragile as hope made her feel both comforted and terrified. For the first time in her life, Zara wasn't sure what to believe anymore. She wasn't sure who she was or what she was supposed to do. She had spent years building walls around her heart, avoiding connection, avoiding the risk of caring too much. But now, those walls were starting to crumble, and she wasn't sure if she could stop it. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts, and Zara turned to find Marcus standing in the doorway. His expression was serious, but there was a warmth in his eyes that made Zara feel like he understood exactly what was going on in her mind. "I thought we should talk," Marcus said quietly, stepping into the room. "It feels like everything is coming to a head and, well, I don't want to pretend like it's just business anymore." Zara felt a pang of frustration in her chest. She had been trying to avoid these feelings, to keep her distance from him, but now he was standing right in front of her, and she couldn't escape the connection they had built. It was both comforting and overwhelming. "I know what you're thinking," Zara said, her voice more tense than she intended. "This isn't just about us. This is about peace. This is about the future of both our people. Nothing else matters." Marcus took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. "That's the thing, Zara. It does matter. You matter. You've been carrying all of this on your own for so long, and I can see it. You don't have to do this by yourself. We're in this together." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She had never allowed herself to believe that someone else could care about her, that someone else could be there for her in the way Marcus was suggesting. But the words he spoke, they rang true. She did feel like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, but she had always been too proud to admit it. "I didn't ask for this," Zara said sharply, her fists clenching at her sides. "I didn't ask for any of this. I never wanted to rely on anyone. I've never needed anyone." Marcus's eyes softened as he stepped closer. "I know it's hard. I know you don't want to admit it, but you don't have to face this alone. I'm not asking you to change, Zara. I'm asking you to let me be by your side." Zara felt a surge of emotion, frustration, fear, longing, all mixing together into something she didn't know how to control. She had never been good at opening up, never been good at letting others see who she really was. But here, with Marcus, it was different. She could feel the walls she had built around herself slowly crumbling, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face what was on the other side. "I can't trust anyone," Zara whispered, her voice shaking. "I've never been able to trust anyone, and I don't know how to let go of all the fear. The fear of being hurt." Marcus was silent for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. He didn't push her. He didn't try to convince her that everything would be fine. He simply stood there, waiting. And in that silence, Zara realized something. He wasn't asking her to be perfect. He was asking her to be real. "I'm not going to push you, Zara," Marcus said finally, his voice low and steady. "But I am here. If you need me, I'm here, and I will be here no matter what." Zara looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. The fear that had held her captive for so long was still there, still gnawing at the edges of her thoughts. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't as afraid to face it. "I don't know what to do with all of this," Zara admitted quietly. "I don't know how to let go of the fear." Marcus took a deep breath, his gaze never leaving hers. You don't have to figure it out all at once. We'll take it one step at a time. But you don't have to carry it all alone, Zara. Zara swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent so much of her life trying to push people away, trying to remain strong and independent. But now, here was Marcus. Someone who cared for her, who believed in her, who was offering her something she never thought she could have. Trust, connection, and a chance at something real. I'm scared, Zara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared of what happens if I let go. What happens if I trust you? What happens if this doesn't work out? Marcus stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His hand reached out, gently resting on her arm. If you trust me, if you let go of the fear, then we'll face it together. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Zara felt the weight of his words settle deep in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like she had to carry the burden by herself, and that thought, strange and foreign as it was, made her heart feel lighter than it had in years. I'll try, Zara whispered, the words barely leaving her lips. I'll try. Marcus smiled, and in that moment Zara realized something that she had been too afraid to admit. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to face the unknown. Not alone, but with him by her side. The peace talks were nearing their end. The final details were being hammered out, and Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. It had been a long, difficult journey, but they were almost there. Almost at the point where peace between their two species would be officially recognized. But there was something else hanging in the air, something she couldn't shake. It wasn't just about the peace anymore. It was about her and Marcus. The connection they had built over the past few weeks had grown stronger with every passing day. Zara couldn't deny it any longer. She had allowed herself to trust him, to open up in ways she never thought possible. And the more she trusted him, the more she realized just how much she had been missing. It wasn't just the peace talks, or the strategy, or the politics. It was the simple act of being human. Of sharing a moment, a smile, a conversation. Zara stood in the quiet hall, looking out the large window that overlooked the planet. The stars were scattered across the sky like diamonds, each one representing a possibility, a future yet to be written. Her thoughts drifted to Marcus, who was still in the meeting room, finishing up the final paperwork. The peace talks were almost complete, but the feeling inside her was different than before. There was a new weight in her chest, one that was filled with uncertainty, but also hope. She had always believed that strength came from distance, that keeping others at arm's length was the only way to stay strong, to stay in control. But now she understood something different. True strength wasn't about pushing people away. It was about embracing the unknown, about trusting even when it felt risky, about opening her heart to someone else. Zara, a voice called softly from behind her. Zara turned to see Marcus walking toward her. His smile was warm, his presence calming, and she felt the familiar flutter in her chest. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was something else, something that felt right. You've been quiet all day, Marcus said, his voice gentle. I thought I'd find you here. Zara smiled faintly. Just thinking, she replied, her voice a little more relaxed than usual. The talks are almost over. Everything is falling into place. Marcus nodded, his eyes studying her with an expression that was both understanding and curious. I know. It's been a long road, but we did it, and I think we've accomplished more than we ever imagined. Zara felt a wave of pride, but it was tempered by the realization that it wasn't just about the peace anymore. It was about the partnership they had formed along the way. We did it, Zara repeated, her voice soft. But I don't think it's just about the peace. I think we've changed, Marcus. Marcus raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift. In her tone. Changed how? Zara took a deep breath, trying to find the words. When I first met you, I thought I could just focus on the talks, keep my distance, stay professional. But now I realize I can't do that. I can't just shut myself off from everything anymore. I'm not the same as I was when we started. This. Marcus took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. You don't have to be the same. None of us do. That's what change is all about. And maybe the peace talks were just the beginning. Maybe this, he gestured between them. Maybe this is the future. Zara felt her heart race, the weight of his words settling deep in her chest. She had spent so much of her life believing that she had to be in control, that vulnerability was a weakness. But now, standing here with Marcus, she understood something completely new. Vulnerability didn't mean weakness. It meant strength. It meant the ability to connect with another person, to trust, to believe in something bigger than herself. I don't know what the future holds, Zara said, her voice trembling slightly. But I want to face it with you. I want to see what's possible, together. Marcus smiled, and in that smile, Zara saw everything. Hope, understanding, trust. I want that too, Zara, he said softly. We've come this far, and I believe we can go even further. The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if the entire universe was holding its breath, waiting for them to take the next step. And then, slowly, without a word, Marcus reached out, gently taking Zara's hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but to Zara, it felt like a promise. We've been through so much together, Marcus said, his voice steady, and I know that we can face anything that comes next. But it won't be easy. There will be challenges, of course, but if we're together, I believe we can make it. Zara felt a lump form in her throat as she looked down at their hands, clasped together. She had always believed that peace was something to be won with logic, with strategy. But now, standing here with Marcus, she realized that peace didn't just come from agreements and treaties. It came from trust. It came from the willingness to let go of fear and embrace something new. I've been afraid for so long, Zara admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Afraid to trust, afraid to let go. But now, with you, I'm ready. I'm ready to face whatever comes next. Marcus squeezed her hand gently, his smile growing. I'm with you, Zara, every step of the way. Zara felt the weight of the moment settle in her chest. The future wasn't guaranteed, but in that moment, standing beside Marcus, she felt a sense of peace that she had never known before. She was no longer afraid of what might happen. She was no longer afraid of the unknown. For the first time in her life, she was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might bring. Let's do it, Zara said softly, her eyes meeting Marcus's. Together, the two of them stood there for a moment longer, their hands still, intertwined, their hearts beating in sync. The future was uncertain, but it no longer felt frightening. Together, they could face anything.